He keeps himself in trim by bending bars of iron. This bar is the genuine article which we tested before he began to play with it.
Beyond the bend, beyond the bend.
All right, Steve Weiner, welcome to Beyond the Bend.
Thanks so much, Cody. I feel honored to be on here. Appreciate the ask.
So you were basically requested by Darren Shallman, who's someone that's very inspiring to my strength training, and it was a pleasure to have him on. And when he was on, he kept speaking of this guy named Steve Weiner doing so much strong stuff. So I immediately got in contact right after and booked you. So it's my pleasure to have you on, man.
Much appreciated. Darren's a strong guy, and he's a very tenacious fellow, and I really like watching his training videos because he's got a real steady scientific approach to his training, and I like his tenacity.
Definitely. So I'll start it like I start them all. We'll get into a lot of different stuff tonight, but tell me about the first time you saw someone bend a piece of steel.
So this is an interesting one. I'm not sure if anybody's actually spoken about it, but it's got to go back to the 1977 World's Strongest Man contest. It was the first contest, and they had a steel bending event, and it was very interesting. The guys started off with, I think, half-inch round. It's probably 3 feet long, and you couldn't use anything other than bending it like over your head or around the neck. You couldn't use your lower body in any way, and they were very strict. And it was for anybody who hasn't seen the 1977 World's Strongest Man contest, I'd highly suggest watching it. There are a lot of legends of the strength game not only participating in there, amongst them Bruce Wilhelm, Ken Patera, George Friend, bunch of other guys, Franco Colombo, Lou Ferrigno. But on the referee squad, you got Paul Anderson, Tommy Kono, Harold Connolly, the hammer thrower, and Bob Zuver himself, who's the one who designed all the equipment. So all these people are into collecting plates and stuff like that. They actually used Zuva plates on the wrist roller event. It's really cool. It's a great event. But that's where I first saw my first steel bending, and I was very fascinated with it.
Wow, that's cool. I'm gonna go back and is that on YouTube?
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube. Yeah, and they actually had the same kind of event in the 1978 World's Strongest Man contest. I've been very fortunate. You probably heard guys mention the AOBs dinner, which stands for Association of Old Time Barbell and Strongman. Unfortunately, the dinner is no longer put on. But I was fortunate enough to meet a few of these gentlemen at one of those dinners. Bruce Wilhelm, for one, Ken Patera, I met him. And the funny thing is, I've become friendly with Bruce Wilhelm over the years. And it's always a thrill to me to to speak to Bruce Wilhelm. I mean, even though he's a buddy of mine and he's a friend, but every time I see his name pop up on the screen, I just crack up. I'm like, I can't believe I talk to this guy on the regular.
Oh, that's cool. That's real cool.
Yeah,
that's what I found really neat about this community, if we called it like, old time strongman training or something to encapsulate the steel bending and the stones and everything. Is like everybody was so accessible. The 1 minute you're looking at something on YouTube or Instagram and the person's blowing your mind, and then maybe you can just shoot them a message and they get right back to you with all these tips. It's been a real pleasure getting to know everybody in this tight community.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've encountered the same thing over the years I've been doing this. Is people are very, very friendly and very free to share information. I think that's one of the greatest things. With the steel bending, you're passing on an old time tradition. So it's not that I feel an obligation, but I do in a way to pass this stuff on to people because I don't want to see this art form die. I want to see more people embrace it and try it and get the same sort of enjoyment, outside of the body aches that my shoulders are killing me these days. Get the same enjoyment that I have out of it over the years, because to me, there's just nothing more satisfying than bending a piece of steel. That first time that steel moves in your hand, it's exhilarating, man.
Yeah, I know, man. It's great. So tell me about what life was like growing up as a kid. Were you always athletic, always strong, or?
I think I was blessed with a good throwing arm. Before I put on a lot of weight, I actually was one of the fastest kids in my school. When I say put on weight, it was when I started gaining, when I started weightlifting and stuff like that later on in high school. But I could always hit a ball a long way. So I think I was probably a little more than middle of the road athletically. Played a lot of soccer, basketball, baseball. As an adult, fast pitch softball, which is a dying sport, which is I enjoy it. A lot of guys make fun of softball, but it's not the high arc, it's fast pitch, and I enjoyed it a lot. But my thing was track and field. I started out as a high jumper, and then I converted over to a shot putter and a discus thrower.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And then you said high school is when the weights kind of came into the picture?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I started probably like screwing around a little bit around the age of 14 with a bull worker and the universal bodybuilding course. It was mostly body weight exercises. So I sent away for that. They got a muscular looking guy on the course. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that course. It was, I think, like an 11 to 12 lesson course. And it was interesting. You paid for the course, and then every couple of weeks, a new lesson would come in the mail. It was pretty neat. Yeah. Then I graduated to using you ever hear of a universal gym?
Yep, absolutely.
So they had one of those in the weight room next to the wrestling room at my high school. So I went in there one day, I was like, this is my first foray into the weights. And one of my buddies was a good wrestler. He was about 7, 8 inches shorter than me. He gets on there and he pops 140 on. 40 was the lightest weight on there. So he pops on that weight, and he starts repping it out. And I was like, oh, no problem. I'm tall, I'm bigger than him. So, but I didn't know anything about body leverages, of course. So I get on there naively, and I can't budge the damn thing. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, what? So finally I get down to where I'm doing I get like 70 pounds up, and I'm like, this is pathetic. So I was like, wow, I gotta really work on this. So I got a weight set, and I cement weight set, and I started in my basement. I was benching like 5 days a week, which probably didn't help my shoulders either over the course of my lifetime. But, so it was funny, and all of a sudden, you're making this progress. I'm going up 10 pounds a month, and I'm like, wow, at this pace, I'll bench 520 by the time I graduate. Yeah. You know how that game goes, right? All of a sudden, you learn that your progress isn't like a hockey stick. All of a sudden, it becomes linear, and then you have to try to figure out. And back then, I graduated high school in 1981. I started in the late 70s. Really not much to go on. You had some magazines down at the magazine stand, which was mostly bodybuilding oriented.
Right.
There was Iron Man magazine, which I didn't know about till later. That would have probably helped me a lot. The original Iron Man with Perry Rader, excellent magazine. And you really had to do kind of think it out for yourself, which I see all the personal trainers and stuff these days, and people doing all these the tonal. They have to have a mirror tell them what to do. I'm like, what happened to people figuring things out for themselves? That's the joy of this journey. It's yes, you need a little help here and there, but tweaking things and figuring things out for yourself, benching 5 days a week really isn't it anymore. Then I switched to 3, and then 2, and then 1. All of a sudden my strength started going up, and it's like, wow, starting to figure this thing out myself. And it's very gratifying, because you could bring that aspect of that journey over to any aspect of your life when you're trying to solve a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've experienced the same thing and my good friend Dave Nisbet, he always says, I ask him a lot of questions because he's a really strong guy that's been doing this stuff for a long time. And he's just always says, Cody, there's a lot of ways to get strong, man. He's just like, there's lots of ways to get there, it's like, and that's what I've realized, through exploration, and it's cool.
Body weight, weights, rubber bands, odd objects. Look, right. It's all good. The funny thing is, a lot of people get wrapped up in putting together a gym with everything in it, the dumbbells, the barbells, the odd objects. When you come down to it, honestly, you could probably just get strong if you had a 100-pound stone twice a week, just clean and press this thing as many times in 30 minutes as possible. You'll be a monster. It comes down to things being that simple.
Yeah. And it kind of seems like it's just like, what do you like? What are you actually gonna
Oh yeah,
do? You know, like that's like I don't know if you're familiar with Stan Efferdine, who
yeah,
does
yeah.
the vertical diet and all that. And he has that slogan, the only science is compliance. And it's like so true. It's like, what will you actually do? That, you know, like if you like you know, if you like it, you'll do it. And if you hate it, you won't do it. And that's it.
100%. And that's, that's such an important thing. Like, as many times I wanted to, go out and run. Oh, let me do some cardio. I can't stand running. I hated it like the
Yeah.
plague.
Yeah.
And then I did it for a little while, stuck with it. But the one constant in my life has been doing the weights for the last 43 or 44 years, whatever it is at this point.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. So when did you get introduced? When did you make the segue from the regular weight set that you got from a kid? When did you get exposed to the type of like strength feats and Dennis Rogers and Povolitis and all these guys?
Way later, way later. I went through the end of high school. I was exposed to Nautilus training, which, when done right, there's nothing magical about the machines. The machines are excellent, but you still have to work very hard. The way they're designed is a way where it's variable resistance, right? Things become harder at the end of the movement. So if you're doing the pec fly, right, it becomes harder when you contract it. A lot of people just throw it, and they do a couple of sets, and they're like, oh, this machine really isn't doing anything for me. It's because you're not doing it right. I got shown how to use the machines the right way, and I made really good strength gains in very, very brief workouts, 2 or 3 times a week. Along the way, I got a back injury doing, of all things, a leg press machine. I had to have that operated on, and I was about 25 years old when I had that. I blew a disc out. I was told I'd never lift heavy again. So I kind of let, I was like, all right, I'm still going to work out. Worked out on machines on the lighter side for like 6 or 7 years. And I was like, I'm feeling good. You know what? Let me get back to the barbells and start working out again. It was almost like starting over. Deadlifting like 225 for a set of 10 took it all out of me. But the weight started going up and up and up. So to get and eventually, I was doing that, the power, mostly centered around powerlifting and stuff. And I started getting into the strength feats. So I went to my first AOBs dinner in the year 2000, and I didn't know anybody there. It was over in at the time at the Saddlebrook Marriott in New Jersey.
Okay.
And I said, I'm just going to buy a ticket. I'm going to go. I don't know who's going to be there. And man, I hit the jackpot. The guest of honor that year was Bruno Sammartino. If you don't know him, he was a big WWF wrestler back in the day when it used to be the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. He held the belt for the longest time and sold out Madison Square Garden like well over 100 times, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, he's awesome. And he was, big time strength athlete too. Great bench press. He benched like 565 or something like that. And natural, no, he was like the real deal.
Oh yeah.
And there were a whole bunch of guys there. I met Slim the Hammerman there, Dennis Rogers, Stanless Steel, also his name was Stan Pleskin.
Oh,
so
cool.
That night, Dennis and Stan performed. I think I believe a guy by the name of Russell Jones also performed. Dennis comes up with a Manhattan foam, but boom, blows through the thing, rips right through it, and doing it the right way, genuine tear, not
the thumb thing
together and splitting it. We all know there's ways to cheat that, but no, not Dennis. He did a whole bunch of other stuff that he rolled a frying pan, which I'm just sitting there like with my jaw on the ground, just watching this stuff. I'm like, this is awesome. Guys bending bars and stuff. And I was like, this is the coolest stuff I have ever seen. I was like, I got to do this. I got to do this. So I tried doing some stuff, like, believe it or not, I went home and I got an old diaper rag, and I tried taking like a spiral 60 penny nail. I couldn't budge the thing. And then I like put it against my leg, and I'm pushing down on it. Finally, I got the thing to move, and I was so happy. And I kind of screwed around with it on and off like that. And then I got into doing the hand grippers around 1998, and I read about the Captains of Crush grippers in Dinosaur Training, which is a great book.
Okay.
I highly recommend it if you can get your hands on it. And they
Yeah,
talked
one more
about
of
the
it.
Captains of Crush grip. Yeah, it's great. They talked about the Captains of Crush grippers and this and that, blah blah blah. And they talked about Iron Island Gym, representing that gym right here. It's long since gone, but it holds a near and dear place in my heart and a lot of people's hearts. Great powerlifting gym owned by Dr. Ken Leistner, who's a legend in the iron game. I went down there. He had a couple of Captains of Crush grippers. I closed the one. I closed the two. And I'm saying, wow, I got to, who knows? Maybe I can close the three. I ordered these grippers, nowhere close to the three. I'm like half an inch away or whatever it was. From that day, it took me over 2 years to close an eighth of an inch gap when I that was percent. We could talk more about grippers later, but what happened was in about 2002, I went to an AOBs dinner and I arranged something called the drip table with Vic Boff, the guy who used to run the AOBs when he was alive, and there were a whole bunch of guys down there from the early grip days, and as for the first time I met Pat Povolitis. We'd spoken on the phone many times, but he came down, he brought some steel. Another guy by the name of Tom Black brought some steel down. And they're bending the steel. And I was just like, wow, this is awesome. They're bending. Pat actually was the guy who really put the reverse bend on the map. And his nickname was Terminator. So this is known as the Terminator style.
Oh, cool.
Referred to as that. So that's where that originated. And yeah, I was bitten by the bug. And then, I started working out with Pat quite a few times a month. And even though he lived like 2 hours from me, I made the trip out there, and, he showed me some stuff and, got into the bending pretty heavy, really heavy.
Now, how'd you even hear about the dinner to go that first time? Was it from like reading Iron Mind, like the grippers and stuff?
I'm trying to remember. I just read about it somewhere. I don't remember where.
Wow.
And I looked it up on the internet and found out somehow. My memories. I'm going back, over 20 years, and I don't even remember.
Just fate.
Yeah, it was just fate. I thought it was like the coolest thing. They didn't have the dinner in 2001 because of 9/11. They used to have it in the fall, so they pushed that to the following summer. So the 01 dinner was actually in 02. Yeah, no, but it's such an interesting place to have gone because you're in the room and you're sharing the room with guys who've won gold medals in the Olympics, competed on the biggest bodybuilding stages. And it originally started as a birthday party for Sig Klein. If you've ever heard of him, he was an old time strongman and gym owner. Yeah. And it started at Lenny's Clam Bar in Queens. And it just expanded, and they ran it in a downtown athletic club in New York City. And then I went to the first one that they had at Saddlebrook Marriott. But John Grimmick used to go to them all the time. Jules Bacon, all these old timers, Isaac Berger, just Don Reinhardt was there from World's Strongest Man. It was just an incredible thing, and everybody was just so friendly and approachable. Mark Henry went a couple of times.
Cool.
So.
I also liked what you said there about the spiral 60 and the cloth, because it's like, it speaks to how exciting steel bending is, because you're talking someone that had over 20 years of lifting under your belt at that time, and you braced a 60 over your thigh and got a rush out of that, I just think that's like so interesting, and just speaks to like what it feels like to just move some steel. It's a separate thing from weights and everything. It's like it's just like, it's hard to explain if you haven't done it, it's but if you have done it, we all know.
Yeah, it's funny. It just blew my mind knowing that these guys did the bends away from their bodies and stuff like that without using any sort of bracing technique. And I was like, how do you even develop that sort of strength? How do you even go there? And that was the big mystery I had to unravel.
Yeah. So where did it go from there? Did Pat show you how to start doing some unbraced bends, or how did your training change after getting exposed to this kind of stuff?
So my training was interesting. The bending kind of took over my entire upper body training. I would concentrate on doing I would do like deadlifts, maybe some pressing to warm up, and then it was bending, one workout a week, and the other was squats and then bending. Because my rationale was, if I'm doing, bench pressing too heavy or overhead pressing too heavy, I'm probably going to waste all my energy, when I'm going to need it to throw it into bending the steel. So I remember going over to Pat's house the first time, and he's showing me the Terminator technique. And I got to tell you, I put such strain on my wrists. I remember leaving the first few times doing that. I felt like, I fell on my wrist and sprained it for the first couple of times I did it. My hand would just be hanging there. I'd be like, what am I doing to myself? But, after doing this, it became more natural. And, you start to build up the tendon and ligament strength. As we all know, that takes a lot longer to build up than the muscular strength. It's just hammering and hammering, but being smart about it too, and not tearing yourself apart, but pushing yourself to that brink. Learning to embrace the pain. Also, when I first started, I didn't know what to wrap a nail with. I actually cut up an old pair of blue jeans, and my wraps were maybe about 4 inches wide by 6 inches long. So here I am. I'm like just wailing into the steel. And the head and the point are like going into my palms, and it hurt. It hurt. But then then Pat was like, well, you should use leather. And so that's when I first started, going out and getting some leather and making my own leather wraps. I actually still have my original wraps somewhere around here. I just used them the other night, actually.
Oh,
and
nice.
Yeah. I mean, it started out, it wasn't such thick leather, but it's thinned out over the years, and of course there's a hole in it where all the points have poked through over the years from the nails and bolts and stuff. But that's what I started with, and I was like really determined. I progressed pretty quickly to doing grade 5s reverse style, and
nice.
Learning the fun of how springy a grade 5 bolt can be. It was just nasty, and there were variations. The interesting part about the whole game of grip and bending is there wasn't much out there, right? So you had, at the time, you put a lot of time going into like where to buy your steel, what kind of steel to get, hot rolled, cold rolled, oil hardened drill rod, water hardened drill rod. What do you get, right? So that it was a big experiment. Like a lot of guys just take it for granted that they know where to go, but that advice started way back like 20 years ago. And Pat and I just, and especially Pat, researched where to buy this stuff. I found a friend of mine worked at a place called MSC, who supplies metals and stuff. So I used to get stuff from him. God, I'm trying to think of some of the other names of the places. It's been a long time since I went out and bought steel, because I bought so much and I still have stuff. But going to what you call it, the Davis for what was it? What Davis for the horseshoes? Everybody goes there for the horseshoes. Ken Davis and Sons in Ohio. So half the battle is trying to find where to get this stuff. But I kind of enjoyed that hunt. It made it interesting when you found out where to get it and then how to progress. I had everything very carefully labeled, exactly what hardware store I bought stuff in. If I liked the 60 penny nail, I went back the next day, I bought them all up. That was on the advice of Slim the Hammer Man. Slim the Hammer Man would go, boy, if you like something, you go out and you get yourself a lifetime supply of that. That's Slim.
Yeah, I love that aspect, and I like hearing about that because, it's like I started jiu-jitsu in 2008, and it was still kind of developing then, there wasn't, I drove an hour and 15 minutes to Albany to train, and there wasn't too many people training there. And like, I don't know how I might have found it in like a magazine or something like that. And growing up playing in bands and being fans of like punk rock music and all this stuff, like I experienced the same of just like, you'd read the liner notes and see what bands that band thanked, and then you go discover those bands. And it's just like, the hunt is, I think back to that, and the hunt is really exciting, and it's special. And it's obviously we see people progressing to the red nail really fast now because they know exactly how to step it, and they know like 60D to grade 5 to grade 8 to drill rod and so on. So it's like the whole game has changed, and thanks to you guys that were out there doing the legwork in the beginning. And was the grip board a thing at that time? Were you guys using that at all?
So you want to know about the grip board, huh? I'll throw you a little known fact that the grip board was not the first name for the grip board.
I think I might have heard
the grip board
that.
actually was called the grip page.
Okay, yeah.
And it started like in the late 90s by a guy named Solon. I think he was from like Sweden or Norway. I never met the guy. Wow. And there were probably about 40 or 50 guys on there. Like Richard Strowman was on there. Brookfield every so often would pop in. I was on there. Pat was on there. Bill Pichet, who runs the Cyber Pump site, was there. And that's where the grip page, of course, resides now. And became the grip board eventually. But that was a good place. The grip board now, you could get, so many posts a day. Back in the day, you maybe got 2 or 3, 4 posts or something, but it was people would come up with like solid gold and put it up there. It wasn't,
right.
It's not knocking the grip board or anything. But when the floodgates were open, somebody would go, I just bought a number 2 gripper. Oh, congratulations. Yeah, you bought a gripper. Congratulations. Not to mock it, right? But
I know what you mean exactly.
Yeah, it just there was no backslapping. It was like solid advice. And the interesting thing is, like, so when I got into doing grippers and stuff, Bill and I were aligned. We wanted to both close a number 3 gripper, like in the worst way. And he came from a powerlifting background, and he was like one of the top deadlifters in his weight class. He made like top 50 in the country. He did like a 600 deadlift at 198. And he was in powerlifting USA. So guy's a strong guy, knew his stuff. And he and I would go back and forth, email after email, like training advice. What did you do? What did you do? What did you do? What don't you do? How often do you train? And it was like an obsession, closing that number 3 gripper. Meanwhile, there was nothing between the 2 or the 3. So you got a gripper that you can master, close for reps, and then you got one that you're 1/8 of an inch away and you're in no man's land, right? You're squeezing as hard as you can. How do you close that gap? That was the great mystery. So I tried anything. I tried coin holds, where you take like a penny or a dime, holding the number 2 shut for timed holds, and making sure the coin was only in the gripper handles, not rubbing against your hand until the coin fell out. Then I read about something called strap holds. John Brookfield put out an article where you take an old piece of leather and attach weight to the leather and do that same coin hold, but with a strap. So you have weights, what makes it harder. All right. And I had to be careful with the volume I would do with those. I'd be wasted after doing like 2 or 3 at the end of my workout. I'd warm up, do a few attempts on a 3, some forced closes. And then I was like, what else could I do? I searched around and I found a company that manufactured something called the Beef Builder grippers. You may have heard of them. Warren Tedding, has passed on. He manufactured those grippers. He manufactured the original Iron Man grippers, and then Iron Mind kind of took over the whole gripper game. Okay. And you could always tell Tedding's grippers because they had like a pinhole to hold the handles onto the spring with, where Iron Minds glued them. Okay, so Tedding's grip was very desirable. So they had something called the Beef Builder Master, right? They only had 3 grippers. It was the Advanced, the Master, and the Elite. So the Master was equivalent to about a 2.4 or so, in my estimation. So I got that gripper. I started working on that, and then doing strap holds with that. And I was working for months on that thing, and just one day magically, I took like a week-long rest. And I took my number 3, slammed it shut. I was like, I can't. I'm screaming like a maniac. My wife comes running down to the basement. What's the matter? I was like, I closed number 3, and she starts laughing. She goes, I thought you like got shot or something, So then I closed it like 2 more times. I'm like, I got to certify. I got to certify. So and I walked around like not using my right hand for like almost anything except for writing. I was like, oh, I'm gonna lose my power all of a sudden, It's like, if I ride the subway, I'd hold on to the bar with my left arm, so I wouldn't like wait. Like it was like I look back and you're like, you're out of your mind. But like a week later, I went to Iron Island Gym, and I had a couple of guys from the gym lined up as witnesses through Randy Strowman, and I closed the gripper, and I was so excited. It was just, I didn't do it for anything other than me. It was a personal goal. It was something hard to achieve, and I set out and I did it. I ended up getting to the point where I was repping a number 3 for about 6 reps, and then I don't know. I just kind of lost my interest a little bit after that. I always maintained my grip strength, but I always thought the gripper was a learned skill. It has its place in the toolbox,
Right.
but if you're holding onto a bar, it's not at an angle of a gripper, right? It's not like this. It's one go bar. It's totally different. So the grippers are great if you go on vacation. You throw it in your bag and you mess with it to keep your grip good. But that was awesome. So the interesting thing is, back in the day, I know I'm talking a lot. I'm just throwing out a lot of memories.
No, it's good. It's great, man.
is like I said, there's nobody to really talk to in person about how to train grip. You didn't have videos or anything like that. So I was on a mission. I went out. I said, I'm going to contact as many people on the Captains of Crush list as I can. I contacted Brookfield. I contacted Joe Kinney. I contacted Richard Surin, Charlie Lysak, Bob Bolenbach, who runs a gym up in Monroe, New York. He had 3 guys who closed number 3. I contacted him to talk about his training methods. I'm like, this little gym, he had the first 3 out of 6 captains of Crush. He must know something. I was like a man possessed. I was trying to get advice from everywhere, and it was interesting. I remember my conversation with Richard Soren, and he told me about what he did, and he said, train, don't stimulate, don't annihilate, and that rang something in my head. I was like, all right, so don't beat the crap out of my hands all the time,
Right.
work them hard, but give yourself time to recover. What was real interesting too, Cody, is when I closed the grip, I would set it just enough to get my pinky around it, right? And I never once thought about deep setting it to certify. There's a place for deep setting when you're doing training. Eventually, the guys invented a choker so they could do limited closes at the end, right?
Yeah.
But some guys were like taking advantage of the rules. They were deep setting it to where they had to close the gripper like a quarter of an inch,
Right.
to certify. Some guys were foot stomping it or heating the springs. A lot of shenanigans going on because so all of a sudden you saw that number 3 list just start climbing and climbing. So that's when some of the rules started to change. All right. So Randy Strowman out of the blue calls Pat Povolitis and me. We have a conference call, and we're talking about. He's like, Steve, what do you think about this change in the gripper rules? What do you think about some sort of mechanism where you have to close the gripper from a certain distance away instead of deep setting the grippers? So all right. I was like, yeah, I think probably 1.5 inches would probably be good. And so we were kind of all in agreement on that. So, for guys who don't have the biggest hands, he was thinking, oh, should I use something like a bank card? I was like, I took a bank card out of my wallet. I was like, yes. And I had a gripper at my desk at work. I was like, that's kind of wide for me. I don't have really big hands. And I was like, actually to do that, Randy, I'd actually have to put it in the gripper and then let it back out and then close it. So he's like, well, we do need a change in the rules. So he decided to get the credit card rule in place. And then on top of that, he put in place, the witness would get the gripper, right? A brand new gripper. And then the person attempting to close would have to close it out of the package. So there was no shenanigans with heating up the springs or stomping the grippers to try to, season the spring to make it easier and whatnot. I just never saw the sense in that because, I mean, you're just cheating yourself, man. There's no sense in it, man. There's really no sense in it. But that's how those gripper rule changes came about from that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden you sort of hit the amount of certifications on the 3 kind of tailed off a little bit. And I was thinking, look, if it had to be set and I had to recertify to keep my certification, I would have done it. I would have trained to do it. But it just never interested me to recertify again with another set of rules because I did it with the rules at the time, and I did it in my opinion, in my heart of hearts, I did it right with no deep set. It was literally just getting my feet around the end and bashing it home.
Yeah. You know, I love that you said you closed it after a week of rest, because that's something that like has come up for me. All the close guys that I'm friends with that have got into this stuff around the same time is like everybody's always surprised by it, but it's this recurring theme is like, oh, I rested for 4 days and then I did this thing that I've been trying to do. You know, it's like everybody says it, everybody preaches it. It's the hardest thing to practice, but like I'd like to hear some more of your thoughts on like the importance of not beating yourself into the ground and taking the needed rest, and then being stronger even then more because you actually let yourself recover.
Yeah, so it's a great point you bring up. I think rests are important. I've always been an advocate of if you don't feel like you're ready to go, just take another day rest. If you have that flexibility in your schedule, you know, a lot of people train by a template. They're very rigid and go by the template, boom, 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 never figuring out that, you know what, maybe this isn't enough for them, or maybe it's too much for them. You know, for years, I trained 3 times a week. And then because of my work schedule, I was forced to cut down to twice a week. Well, so my list started going up. I'm like, wow, look at that, you know, and people really need to, in order to really track this right, and I tell this to everybody who trains, keep a training journal. Keep a training journal. It's the most important thing that you can keep. As a matter of fact,
that's awesome.
Training. Ratty is all hell, right? But you know, I could tell you what I did Tuesday, March 10th, 1998. What I weighed, exactly what I did. All right.
That's
right
awesome.
There in that book. So look, at the time I was much younger, but the fact of the matter is this. You could see what's working and what's not working for you if you keep a good training log. Look, what did you eat for breakfast a week ago, Cody?
So I have no idea. Well, actually, I do, probably, because I eat the same shit.
right. So what was your training a week ago if you didn't write it down?
Yeah.
It's the same concept, right? It just goes by the wayside and it's lost in the wind.
Totally.
So yeah, I think guys get too wrapped up in the training when they should really also look at the rest as part of their training. Yeah. It's a very important part of your training. So, and it's a big reason why I think I've been able to do this as many years as I can. You know, I've had my share of injuries along the way, like anybody else. But, you know, that stuff's going to happen when you're pushing yourself hard. It's just a fact of the game.
Right. Yeah. And especially it seems like with this stuff in particular and the crowd we're talking about is, I wouldn't say this is a group of people lacking motivation. You know, these are people that are, you know, going into their cellars and their garages to bend pieces of steel, to pick up stones, you know, to do these tear cards, all this stuff that taxes you more than just like, you know, I need to get in shape, so I need to go like walk a couple miles or whatever like that. That's a different type of person that maybe needs to get all riled up and be like, you know, I need to train. Like it seems like this crowd is like, we need to talk ourselves into the rest rather than, you know, getting fired up for the training, right?
No, you hit the nail. We're bending, we hit the nail right on the head, right? But it's so true. It's one of those silly things like, you know, we all think if we don't do that extra rep or we don't take that extra day of rest, that all of a sudden our strength is going to just disappear, you know, but it's not. It could have the total opposite effect, and it's just amazing. And sometimes we learn these lessons out of necessity.
Yeah,
you know, we're forced into these situations. You know, when my son right now, he's getting into weightlifting. He's 20, and you know he's. So I love it. You know, he's a big, strong kid. He has much better genetics than I do. He inherited a lot of good genetics from my wife's side of the family. And, you know, I see how fast he's progressing. And some weeks he'd work out 5 times a week. I'm like, you know, as you get stronger, you're going to have to cut that down. when you work and go to school at the same time, you're probably not going to keep that up. I'm telling you, you want to get into a training routine that's realistic. You don't want to build your life around the training. You build the training around your life so you can make it a lifelong activity. So all the guys I know that have kept with it all these years and have kept, jobs, have, have had their responsible parents, and they put a roof over their heads, food on the table, all that stuff. They've all worked their training into their lives. My family knows I need my twice a week. I'm shutting my door. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
and they leave me alone for my 2 hours a week, which is like 1.5% of my week, whatever. It's like nothing to invest to make yourself better. And it's just, it's people. A lot of people they work out so often when they're confronted with getting a job that's going to work them 50, 60 hours a week. They quit altogether.
Yeah.
Which is totally the wrong thing. Because when you're under that stress and strain, you need that to give yourself that mental clarity, to give yourself a nice release, so it clears your mind. And if you just, I could never imagine not doing this. I'm hoping to do this till my dying day. So I just love it. Hey, look, you come home after a long day of work, you can sit down with a dish of ice cream, whatever, but say it's like, all right, I'm going to go lift a 350-pound stone tonight. That or a bowl of ice cream. What's more appealing? Okay, you have to be a moron to say you're not going to want that bowl of ice cream, but you know what? Then you got to say, I got to earn that bowl of ice cream. So I'm going to go lift my stone and then go eat the ice cream.
Right. So you've been doing this a long time. I assume you've played around with quantity and intensity quite a bit. So for instance, someone like Adam Glass, I've spoke to him a number of times, and he kind of goes at his training like sort of like in the way like he looks at a stonemason is out there working himself every day hard, right? But not breaking himself, because he's still got to go to work the next day. So he's doing like sub max almost every day. And I was just wondering if you ever experimented with any type of that training where it was like less intensity but more quantity throughout each day of the week, and just like what you've discovered in different stuff that you've tried over the years.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I got to say, first of all, Adam Glass, the stuff that he does is, he's amazing. He's, I thought I was going to get the opportunity to meet him one time. He was supposed to come and perform at AOBs, but something came up and he couldn't make it. So I've met the guy. I've chatted a couple of times back and forth with him on Instagram Messenger, and his training ideas. And look, they speak for themselves. There's so many ways to go about the training. I'd say probably the only time I've really ever experimented like that has probably been with grippers, believe it or not. Okay. There was a time where I would try to close my 3 every day when I was really, when I was doing reps on it.
Nice.
So I would do a hard grip workout. I'd come down. It was crazy. First thing in the morning, right after my alarm rang, I'd come down, I'd take a 3, bang, like cold. I'm like, just close it like once or twice, go up, shower, go to work. And I figured, sub-maximal attempts, it's going to make me better. Did it have a huge effect on my training? Yeah, it got me a little bit better, but I don't know. It's weird. Sometimes I'm like, am I gonna be able to stick with this over the long haul without creating damage? I've always, I don't know. I've always kind of trained with the 2 to 3 days a week mentality.
Gotcha.
For all my other stuff. So, some guys I know have tried lifting like a sub-maximal stone. If they can lift a 300-pound stone, they'll lift a 220-pound stone every day. But they've gotten tendonitis from doing that.
Right.
So you gotta really see how you react to it. But I would agree. A lot of guys who do manual labor, and I think Adam's approach is great. His sub-maximal stuff, people would probably give their their left ear for that to be their maximum.
Right, exactly. When he 400 axle or something.
Yeah, he look, you know what? You can't argue. What works for him works for him, right? I mean, some guys may
Yep.
be able to get that on once a week or twice a week, but you know, you gotta, you know, tip your cap to the guy because he runs on his own gas and he runs on his own thinking, and that's what it's all about. Experiment what works for you. You know, I'm sure maybe one day he'll say, "Hey, let me try 3 times a week," and if he gets stronger, then he'll probably do that. If he doesn't, well, he's going to go back to what worked for him. So
Right.
it's all about
Right.
experimentation. You know, it really, it's, I've gone up as high as 4 days a week and, you know, doing splits and stuff like that. And within like 2 months, I was getting shin splints, elbow aches, you know, tennis elbow. I was like, it's just not working for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not working.
So you mentioned in there just like coming home from work and wanting that clarity of mind and stuff like that. And that's just like, I like to ask everybody, it's just like, if you could expand on that a little bit. It's like, we all know it, but it's hard to put it into words. It's like, what is this stuff really doing for you? You know, you've been doing this for, you know, since the 80s. And, you know, obviously you get quite a lot out of lifting. And I'd like to know in particular, like the feats, right? Like what you like about those and what those actually do for you in your mind, right? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, you know, first of all, it's a great release of stress. You know, so some days I'm like, man, I gotta get in there and do my thing, and nothing's gonna stop me. You know, some other days I'm like, I gotta get in there and do my thing. Just, you know, someone push me in there. But I just know at the end of my workout session, I will feel better physically, mentally, and I will have a sense of accomplishment of succeeding at my workout that I set out to do. And that there's almost nothing else in my life that gives me that sense of accomplishment. It's me against that weight, me against that piece of metal, me against that stone. Nobody else could do this for me. I got to do it myself. I'm going to the post, man. I have to deliver. I got nobody to answer to but myself. I like that self accountability. And it's a very big source of satisfaction for me. That's what keeps me coming back. You know, it's just, that's what keeps me coming back. And as far as I also like the fact that it forces me to focus. It forces me to really focus and get in tune with this wrecked body of mine, you know. So, but it forces me to get into focus. It really does. And it's satisfying like nothing else. There's not, you know, I just can't, you know, you know the feeling. So it's an indescribable feeling when you have a good workout and you got those endorphins running through you, you know, and you're going great guns for the next 24 to 36 hours on those endorphins. At least I do. I go to work. I'm like, I can accomplish anything, man. No one's getting in my way. No one's going to bother me. You know, it's just, that's it, you know. And I think what I also like about it is you learn something about yourself. You learn what you're made out of. You learn what you could accomplish. Like nothing else. And you also learn, you also learn that, you know what, take your preconceived limits, throw them out, man.
Right.
I never in my life thought I'd be lifting, not that I'm a super power lifter or anything, but I never in my life ever thought I'd deadlift 600 pounds, you know. And then when I did, I'm like, I can't believe this. It's beyond my wildest dreams. Or lifting a 350-pound stone. It's just, but I'm like, well, now I expected of myself. You know, I expected it. So you build yourself up and you show yourself what you're capable of. And, you know, I know so many guys who go after this year after year after year and are consistent, and they're successful in their personal lives, their professional lives. And it's just, I don't know. To me, I get such a carryover to every other aspect of life, but that mental aspect, learning to turn off that governor of pain. There's just so many different things, you know, with the mind. Totally. The mind fascinates me. It really does.
Oh yeah, for sure. And with the stuff that you choose to do, is I assume it's probably a mixture of I'm talking the feats is like stuff that you're working up towards, like for a number of weeks or something, and then other stuff you may be like, oh, this would be cool. Let me throw a sandbag on my back and I'll pick up this and I'll do that. Is it a combination of stuff you're working towards and then also stuff that you're just kind of on the fly experimenting with? Or
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I really didn't start taking up the Feats for shows and stuff until probably about, let's say, late 2003, early 2004. Never put on a show. Pat Povolitis and I got invited by Dennis Rogers to perform at the AOBs. We're like, what do we do? Right? And we're like, you know what? We're going to come up with something so different. We're going to blow people's minds. That was our aim. And then we learned from Randy Strowman that we were going to be the warm-up act for John Brookfield and Steve Jack. You know, Steve Jack, he's great guy. Unfortunately, he passed away at way too early of an age. What a great guy. So, you know, I remember Pat saying this to Randy Strowman. He goes, "Tell you guys to bring their A game. We're coming to put on a show." So I'm like, all right, what do we do? We're like, all right, we got about 15 minutes on the stage. Let's come up with like 3 or 4 good things, and then something where we perform together at the end. So we just like started putting pen to paper and thinking up like some crazy crap, you know? So this is some of the funny stuff. Pat led off the show. He bent, I think it was the red nail, cut it down to like 6 inches with a chainsaw from his head on a head strap.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it wasn't on, but you know, it was just like, you know, people like, who the hell is this guy?
Just crazy.
You know, I went up there. I did some I called the Frankenstein Farmer's Walk, which is an original feat of mine. I take 2 big weights for Farmer's Walk handles, and I strap a whole bunch of weight to my head. That particular night, I had 260 pounds in each hand, and I strapped 200 pounds to my head. And I walked about 15 feet until I started hitting people on the floor, basically. You know, the crowd was like eating it up, and I'm like, all right, this is going good. And then so some of the other stuff I did a chain snap, right? People do their chain snaps where they're pulling it off a platform, off the floor, or by chest expansion. So I was like, I got to think of something different, man. I got to think of something different. So I came up with something where I had, you ever snap any chain?
Nah, I never tried that one.
All right, so jack chain is an unwelded chain, if you've ever seen it.
Okay.
Comes in different grades, from like grade 16, goes down by like 2, down to like grade 6. Grade 6 being the hardest, and as the numbers go higher, it gets thinner.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, I've done a neck lift before with 400 pounds. Let me find a piece of chain in that area. So I got number 8 jack chain. I hung it on a handle. I attached to a handle, and it took 315 pounds of pressure for the links to pop. I was like, this is it. I made a platform with an eye hook in it. I attached that chain to the eye hook, then attached the chain to a head strap, and then I stood up, boom, I popped the chain, all right?
Yeah.
So then, to make it even more difficult, I would shoulder a 215-pound sandbag, bend down, put on the head strap, then pop the chain while I'm supporting the sandbag. So that got a good reaction.
Nice.
Then I did something called, I did a lift that was subsequently coined the Bud lift, and I'll explain why that got the name, where I took that same bag, threw it over my shoulder, and the bag was supposed to only weigh 215 pounds, but later on I found out it weighed 250. It came from Pat's house. I was like, crap, man, you know, what are you trying to do, kill me? So I had that on my shoulder and lifted 425 pounds with my right hand. Then I flipped the bag to my right shoulder and then lifted that weight with my left hand.
Wow.
That was my 3rd feat. And then the 4th feat, Pat put a 292 pound stone on my stomach while I was lying on the floor. I bent, I think, a grade 5 or 60D while I'm lying down there. He sat on the stone at the same time and bent to cut down a red nail. That was our finale. And the crowd was going nuts. But the thing I forgot to tell you is before the show, Slim sat us down. Slim the Hammerman said, pat me down. It was both of our first public performances. And he goes, see that stage? You own that stage. See those people out there? You put them right here. You put them in the palm of your hands. You look out there. They're yours. They're yours. Then he walks away. Pat and I were like, oh. Yeah, here's a guy that's a legend, man, living legend. Fired us up, and we killed that show. We did all these crazy combination feats, and it was just, we had a blast, man. We got and after, what was really great, you know who Joe Rolino was?
Name sounds familiar, but maybe just from watching the movies or something.
So he was an old strong man, and he used to perform with Warren Lincoln Travis way back in the day. I don't know if you've ever heard of Warren Lincoln Travis, old time strong man.
No, I haven't.
So we knew he performed with. He comes up to the two of us and says, "That was the greatest strongman show I have ever seen." We're like,
oh man.
You know, and I was like, wow, that was really nice of him to say. Whether he meant it really or not, I really was floored by that compliment. And you know, that was just the beginning of it all. You know, and then you're just addicted to performing, man. And you know, that the AOBS was probably the only place where I would go, like, you know, sorry about my language, balls to the wall, in terms of strength feats, because you're performing in front of world's strongest men winners, Olympic gold medalists, you know, bodybuilder, Mr. Americas. I mean, they know what they were seeing. So I was like, you know what? I'm leaving it all on the floor, man. When I came here, and you know, we really put a lot of creativity in that show, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And now I gotta say, you know, Pat is a very inventive guy. He is the inventor of the horseshoe heart. If you didn't know that.
I heard that actually. That's crazy.
Yeah, he actually calls the feet hearts of palm. You know. So he's the guy who invents that. And then the one thing I got to say about Strowman is, you know, if you know who invented a feat, whatever. If I'm at a show and I'm going to do that. First of all, I've asked Pat permission. I said, "You mind if I do them in my shows?" He's like, "Go ahead." I give credit where credit's due. It's not hard to do, and that's the one thing I get a little upset sometimes if people know the lineage of it and they don't give credit where credit's due, because that, to me, being a strong man is being not only physically strong, but being a strong man of character.
Sure.
So that counts in the equation as well. And before I go on, let me tell you about the Bud lift. I played to do the Bud lift. It was after one of the AOBS dinners, and I think it was 2007 or 8, or maybe even 2005. I don't even remember. I got to look up my records here. Bud Jeffries was a bit heavier at the time. The day after the dinner, we went over to Pat's house, and there was a whole bunch of us over there messing around. So Bud weighed about 380 at the time, and Bud's about like 5'10", I guess. And at the time, he was probably about 100 pounds lighter now. And Bud Jeffries is ridiculously strong. I mean, you know, if you know him, you just watch him. And, you know, some people like to say, "Oh, well, you didn't do this for full range of motion." I'm like, you know what?
They don't know.
Why don't you try what Bud does?
Yeah.
Why don't you try it? Because I guarantee you cannot. So Bud was gracious enough. I said, "You mind if I try lifting you on my shoulder?" Right? So he's like, "No." So I was like, "I don't want any help." He goes, "I'm not going to give you any." So, you know, I'm getting down, way down, and I lift him up. I'm like, "Oh man," you know. I said, "You mind if I try something?" You know. So we had 340 pounds on a weight pin. So I lift up Bud and then lifted up that weight, you know, and thus the Bud lift was born.
Oh man, that's awesome. I'm glad you told that story. That's cool, because Bud Jeffries was like the, you know, like the way it went for me was like, there's a guy over in England named Dan Strauss, who's a jiu-jitsu black belt, and also
he's a strong dude. So
yeah, exactly. Right. So he was my kind of segue into this world. And then I, you know, discovered the steel bending, and then Don Cummings blew my mind. It was like, I thought the coolest thing you do was a red nail. And then I saw what Don does, you know, and like, and then I got turned on to Bud Jeffries, and that really expanded it even further. I was like, look at what this guy's doing. And then from there, then Darren came along, because Darren's a smaller guy. I'm a smaller guy. And, you know, Darren's like a miniature Bud Jeffries doing this crazy stuff. So it's like, you know, all these guys, you included, like it's just, it's expanded what I think of as being strong so much. And it's like, when I speak to people that don't know this stuff, I'm just like, you don't even know what's out there with these guys. I'm like, I'm telling you, you think you know what's strong. I got a bunch of guys that like will literally blow your mind. It's been a wild ride, really cool.
Yeah,
So
you know, I just want to say one thing about you know, performing. It's interesting. I've done at this point, I don't know, hundreds of shows. I've done a lot of parties, charity events, and stuff. And what's really interesting, I was told by Dennis Rodgers a long time ago, when you do shows, don't push your limits every time you do a show. So I'm going to put this into the context of training too. Do what you know is just beyond anybody's capability, basically, in the audience, you know, that you think. So, you know, most people aren't going to be able to bend a grade 60 or a grade 5 or something. But, you know, it's really interesting. You know, I've seen some really good performers over the years. I've seen some really, really strong guys who they just don't know how to perform. You know, there's a lot of things that go into making a good performance. Facing the crowd, you know, sometimes doing a first attempt that fails on purpose, and then the crowd gets behind you. There's all sorts of showmanship involved. This is involved talking with people who've performed, you know, for a living. You know, I've researched some of this stuff, and other people have just told me, like Dennis has been very gracious with information. One of the greatest performers I've ever seen, if you see that scroll up top there, that the infinity scroll, that was given to me by Eric Weiner. He gave that to me at Slim the Hammer.
Oh yeah. Yep. I've been in touch with Eric. He's supposed to come on.
Yeah, he'd be a great guest. Best scroll in the world, in my opinion. And he, you know, that was an honor that he gave that to me, and I saw him do one of those in person. And it's just very, very good performance. Very deliberate in his movements. You take the bar, boom, bash it down, you know, into the stage like it was almost like, you know, a Viking, like, you know, stabbing his prey. You know, doing the bends very purposefully. It was a beautiful performance, and he made a beautiful piece of art.
Cool. Yeah. So in there, you talked about the head harness and the neck training and stuff like that. I reached out to Darren before the show, and I said, I'm having Steve on. What questions do you have? So he asked about he asked what you've done for training your neck, and if you're doing anything these days about neck training.
Here's the funny thing, you know, I mess around with the head harness quite a bit. If you do the head harness right, to me, it works your whole posterior chain. But when you're doing some of the neck lifts, like, you know, my signature show-ending feat that I've done for years now, I do a triple combination feat. I'll take a 100-pound granite sphere, put it onto my left shoulder. I have a 200-pound fire hydrant attached to my head. I stand up with that. I was about that much off the ground. Then I pick up, I have a circus hammer that weighs about 10 to 12 pounds, depending upon how damp it is. And then I lever that to my head. There's video of it out there. It's kind of fun to watch, but you know, when I'm not, it's a funny thing. Sometimes I look at it, I'm like, what the hell's wrong with me? How did I not kill myself? It's actually kind of funny. But quite honestly, a lot of that neck stuff, when you're lifting like that, basically was aligning my spine right. You know, just looking up a little bit like this and lifting with the whole body, and the spine was just very braced. So I mean, quite honestly, I haven't done a whole hell of a lot of direct neck training. I've done the neck harness, you know, probably from farmers walks. Over the years, my traps have gotten pretty strong because I've pushed that at times in my life. I've done some probably ridiculously stupid farmers walk workouts. I can get into them later as well.
That's actually on my list of stuff to talk about from Darren is farmer carries too. So dive in.
You'll be getting some answers. But yeah, you know, I think the neck training too is interesting too, because you could do it any way you want. You know, a lot of guys think you need fancy equipment, but you can imitate a 4-way neck machine just pressing against your head like this, and then back here like this, side to side, and you know, do that while putting some appreciable pressure against there. All of a sudden, you get this nice little pump. It's like, oh, it's quite pleasant. But yeah, you know, I think, but you know, if I had to give advice to guys, it would be start light. And do, you know, Mike Bruce is probably the world's foremost authority on neck training. Guy's a beast, great guy too, pure gentleman. And he advocates high reps on the neck, like one of his favorite exercises, he lays on the bench with his head off the bench with a plate on his head, and he'll do like a set of like 100 plate curls like that,
Yeah.
But you build up crazy strength and endurance from this stuff. But yeah, I to answer Darren's question is, I've probably gotten a lot of neck strains from indirectly stimulating it, from partial deadlifts and the like, that really stress that area.
Nice. And how about the farmer carry stuff specifically? Are you doing any of that these days? And what has been your journey with those over the years?
So farmers carries, I just, it's funny because I don't really move that fast with the weight. And the interesting thing is there's two schools of thought on that. So if you're doing a contest, right, you want to get across that line fast, right? A lot of farmers walks contests now a short distance. Back in the 90s and late 80s with World's Strongest Man contest, they did stuff for like 75 meters. Guys would go real fast and they maybe lose the weight because they were going too fast with it. If you're walking fast, remember, it's every time you're walking fast, that jostles that weight, right? And it's working your grip. So I kind of like, I would plod along, and Pat, it was so funny because Pat would say to me, when you do farmer's walk, I just imagine this music. Boom, 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 boom. It would make me laugh because I'm plodding along doing my thing. I've never let weather be an excuse. I actually do farmer's walks in my basement. And there's turns every 25 feet. So it's murder. I use a pair of sewer grates. One weighs 187 pounds. The other weighs 196. So, doing a set of 200 feet down there, it's 7 turns. All right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I've done some, I've always been actually pretty good at the farmer's walks. I guess from my support group has always been pretty good. Some of the farmer's walks workouts that I've done, and I remember these specifically, I did 120 pounds in each hand for 800 feet without a drop with 3 turns. And I have witnesses that were over who watched me do it. I've done 300 pounds a hand for 100 feet without dropping them. I've done those sewer grates, and they weigh 383 pounds together. I did them for 415 feet without dropping them. I also did them one time for 400 feet without dropping them with 3 turns. And I did 170 pounds a hand straight shot for 510 feet without dropping them. It's the one time I put 105 pounds on each hand. I wanted to go 300 yards, and I made it, and my arms and hands were numb at the end. I actually fell asleep. I couldn't feel my arm. It was like the most bizarre sensation. I never had that happen to me before or since, but it was really, really weird.
Yeah.
But I've also done some farmer's walk endurance workouts. And don't even ask me why I try these things, Cody. But I'll get a goal in my head that just seems like outlandish or that not many people would try, just so I can kind of check it off the box.
Sure.
It's on the bucket list. I did 130 pounds a hand for a mile. So
that's like
it took me like 15 tries or something. What you do is you break it up into small distances, and even if you have more in you the first few sets, you do less, because if you keep pushing it those first few sets, you're never making it. Your forwards give out.
That's like Steve Eustace style. Upon Don's recommendation, I read Rock, Iron, and Steel, and that dude wrote about some wild stuff, some long ass farmer carries and stuff.
He was out there, but he's another guy, right? He got strong by just basically lifting garbage, right? Scrap iron, barrels filled with dirt or whatever, but he got
then
strong.
His dump truck.
It's crazy stuff. Those sewer grates I did for a half-mile farmer's walk one time, and it was just ridiculous.
Now, is this just around the neighborhood?
I'd go back and forth in front of my house, but every so often I would do a finisher. It's a third of a mile around my block. I would do a farmer's carry around the block with the sewer grates.
Oh, that's great.
And that would be great. People would be like, what are you doing? The the last endurance one I did was over this past summer. I did 210 each hand for a quarter of a mile. And one of my neighbors was like, "What are you doing with those?" I was like, "I pick them up and I carry them." He's like, "How much do they weigh?" I was like, 210 a piece. He's like, "You're walking with 420 pounds?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." It's like, "And what do you get out of that?" I said, "A lot of good."
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, if I was limited probably to one exercise the rest of my life, it probably would be farmers walks.
Oh man, I'm glad you said that, because that's occasionally people say that, and a lot of times people say get up, Turkish get up with weight, or and I've also heard farmer carry. That's cool. I always like hearing that one, because I feel like that says a lot about a movement.
Yeah, and because the thing is that a lot of people don't think about is, if you want to really, like, I remember one time I had a half hour. I was going away on vacation. I had like a half hour to work out at like 5:30 in the morning. So what I did was I put like 280 pounds in each hand, and what I would do is, like, I just mapped out a course that was like 40 feet. Every 40 feet, I would put the weights down and deadlift it. So I got in like 20 reps of deadlifts and whatever, like a few hundred feet of carries, whatever it turned out to be. I have it in my journal somewhere. But the point is you could do a great workout just doing the farmer's carries and doing deadlifts every few feet with them. Try it. Just take a 100-foot course, put 3/4 body weight each hand, deadlift it, put it down after 10 steps. Deadlift it, put it down after 10 steps. Tell me what you feel like when you're done. You may not even finish.
Yeah, right. Wow, that's cool, man.
So you got to make the unconventional look conventional.
Right. So Darren also asked about, no surprise here, squat supports for time, if you have any experience with that, and what's your thinking on those?
Do I have any experience? Just ask my spine. So I don't even know what made me get into those. We actually probably the first time I tried squat supports, it was the day after the 2002 AOBs dinner. Myself, Pat Povolitis, and Heath Sexton, who is a great guy and an extremely strong grip man himself. They came out and they came to Iron Island with me. I had never been, I had been there a few times before, but I had never worked out with the guys. I said, "We got to go to Iron Island. We'll have a great time." So we did all sorts of crazy stuff there. We did squats, and it said, "You know what? Let's try squat supports." So we loaded up the bars, and we worked up to where Pat did it a little bit, and he's got a rod in his back, so he bowed out around 800 pounds, 900 pounds, whatever. So we wouldn't like snap the rod in his back.
Right.
And I know Heath and I kept going. We went up to like 1,000. Then I hit like 1105 or something like that.
God damn.
That was like, wow, I really enjoyed that. But it was like up, and then I let it down after like a few seconds. So then I started figuring out, maybe at the end of my squat workouts, I start working these in, but like hold them for a decent amount of time. And I got up to where I was holding decent weight for like, 30 seconds, whatever. I was hitting 800 pounds, 900 pounds. I said, you know what? I want to get up to where I hold 1,000 pounds for a minute. So I was like, I know not many people want to try that. So this was crazy. We went out to, do you know who Kim Wood is?
No.
So he was the strength coach for the Cincinnati Bengals. He was the co-founder of Hammer Strength.
Okay.
One of the smartest minds in the iron game. He's got an amazing literature collection. The guy is smart as a whip, well-read. He's got amazing equipment at his house. He actually is the owner of the original inch dumbbell, which I have tried. Thank you. So it was a great experience. But so this was like the same weekend as one of the Arnold Schwarzenegger fitness expos, which we ended up going to, but we all went to Kim's house in Cincinnati. And I went out there like the morning of. It was a Saturday morning. I got to sleep around 3 a.m, woke up at 5. I went out there with my buddy Dave, and there was about 20 guys out there. Nick Rosendahl, Sean Dockery, my buddy Dave Lemanzik, Pat Povolitis, a bunch of other guys were out there. And we were at Kim's house messing around. I was on like 2 hours of sleep. I mean, like, I'm on fumes. So I'm in front of all these guys. I was like, we started screwing around the squat rack. And Nick Rosendahl and I and Dave Lemanzik were all going and, doing some the squat lockouts, probably about a 6-inch lockout.
Yeah.
And they both worked up to 1,005. So I got 1,005. And I said, all right. I said, someone get the video camera. I said, I'm going to try to do this for a minute. So I went under it, and, you know, I just went into like a zone. I didn't even see anybody. I just put on my blinders. And when I came out of it, it was 68 seconds later, I succeeded.
Wow.
But the interesting thing is, and I brought up to Darren because, you know, I saw he was like wobbling all over the place with the lockouts. I learned to really control my breathing. You know, you have that much tension, you have to create tension.
Right.
Then you just have to shallow breathing.
Yeah.
It sounds harder to do than it is. You really learn control. You're just making yourself a rigid piece of steel. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And because when I first started doing those things, I was like wobbling all over the place. And I remember one time I had like 760 on there, and I was like this, and I wrenched something in my back because the whole damn bar was wobbling along with me. I'm like, how do I stop the bar from wobbling? I was like, I got to control my whole torso and control my breathing. And then once I made that connection, I was able to do what I did. I got up to where I did a lockout with like 1,200 pounds, and I held that for like 5 or 6 seconds. And that's why I pushed it to. And I did that with like the flimsiest of belts too. I gotta even check that, but I would regularly do like stuff without belts, like up over 1,000 pounds. And I'm like, you know, no need to risk that anymore.
Right. Wow. So where'd the stones come into play? Obviously something that I've been getting into and something that's near and dear to you. When did stone lifting come about for you?
So this is the whole thing. Like, you know, when I started, the first time I went over to Pat's house back in like, I want to say it was 2000 and 2002. I could probably look at my journal and tell you exactly what it was. I believe it was like April 1st, 2002. I have it in my book. We worked down, and maybe before that, whatever. But it was back 20 years ago plus. You know, about that area. I had never lifted a stone, and he had these nice granite spheres made by Atomic Athletic. Back in the day, they sold stones when they were in business, and he had these smooth granite spheres and some rough granite spheres. He had a 220-pound rough one and a 292-pound smooth one. So I was like, I had no idea what to expect, right? So here I am. I'm trying 2 new things. I'm trying bending, and I'm doing stone lifting. You know, I mean, I would leave these training sessions and I'd drive home 2 hours. I'd spill into my house and just go into a hot shower and just stay there, you know? I was like, cut up from the stones. But the interesting thing is, right, so I started doing the stones. I used to have the gauntlets on there, right? And then after a while, I said, you know what? I like the feeling of the skin on my stones.
Yeah.
My stones. The stones.
Gotcha.
So you kind of learn to embrace that feeling, and it's going to cut you up and whatever. So what, you know? It is what it is.
Right.
That's when I got into the stones. I got up to the point where I got pretty good with the spheres. I got up to where I was able to shoulder a polished, smooth 292-pound sphere.
Wow.
It was comical because I mean, one time I tried 15 times to get it after a deadlift workout or a squat workout. I couldn't get the thing. I got up to here and I was dropping it. And Pat's like, stop, you're going to kill yourself.
Right.
You know? And then the next time I went over there, I was able to do it because I have a 273-pound rough sphere that I practiced with, and I got that to my shoulder.
Nice.
But that's where I got into the stones, and Pat's been probably one of the biggest influences on my training because of all the odd object lifting, and you know, I did some of the odd object lifting at Iron Island, but I never did. They didn't have stones there at the time, and you know, that's where I got into it. I got into it from Pat, and
nice.
You know, and I got to tell you, you know, ask me more about the bending because there's a whole evolution of that as well. But the stones, you know, I just love them. There's something so primitive about it, and you know, like I said earlier on, I believe I said, you know, I've seen guys who could deadlift a whole mess of weight, you know, 700-800 pounds, who can't even lift a 200-pound stone. And you know, I've had people tell me they had friends who were powerlifters who deadlifted 800 pounds, and the guy had a 200-pound sphere. It took the guy many tries until he finally was able to get it to his lap. So it just goes to show you, I mean, the stone will find any weakness, especially a round stone. And I never used, I've only used tacky once. I just had to try it. It made things a lot easier. But I could tell you, if you don't condition your biceps properly, you're going to pop your biceps if all of a sudden you're lifting a stone that's 60, 70 pounds heavier than you're accustomed to, because you're able to just grasp onto it because of the glue.
Oh yeah.
Look, contests are a different thing. You're using the equipment, and I have nothing against the tacky. I just don't use it. That's my choice. I like to know that if I'm walking along and I see a big stone and I want to lift it, I don't have to sit there, wrap up my arms, tack up, and I can just,
exactly.
I'm wearing shorts. I just get it, go.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, man.
Oh yeah.
I've never used tacky either. I haven't gotten any or whatever, but I understand in competition or whatever. But I think I'll be with you on the mindset about that. It's just as primitive as you can.
Yeah, and believe me, it helps a heck of a lot. It helps a heck of a lot, because I got up to the point where I was able to chest a 320-pound granite sphere without any tacky or anything, and it was a really difficult stone to lift. It took me so many tries to finally get it. But I took a 330-pound cement sphere with tacky, and I chested it and put it on a 50-inch barrel with, 5 times. I did 5 singles with it, like no sweat. It was like I could do a 400-pound stone probably to my chest. I don't know if I could get up to that 50-inch barrel, but it was just crazy. It was actually wasn't in a barrel. It was one of those giant cable spools that you see, and it was tilted sideways.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, Steve. Well, I'm going to start wrapping it up with you, and we're going to do the medley, which is a rapid fire series of questions, mostly about bending.
You're good, because I got to get it. I got to get more into the bending and the bend nail and the rules changes.
All right.
All that stuff. It's interesting.
So, favorite thing to bend, material-wise?
Well, I got to tell you, some of the hardest stuff is not a crowd pleaser, because people don't understand what you're bending. I have to say, my favorite things to bend are frying pans and horseshoes. That's nice. I've always enjoyed that, and the frying pans have been especially good to me. So I can't can't complain about that.
Yeah, actually, I know you're a world record holder for that. What is it? Is it most bent in most rolled up in a minute, or?
Yeah, it's most frying pans in a minute. Yeah. So I did.
When did you get that, and how long's it been?
So I initially did that record back in June of 2013. I rolled. The record was 8 in a minute. I didn't even know that they even had a category of frying pan rolling in the Guinness Book of World Records. I had no idea until I was approached by them to come and interview for a potential spot on their TV show on Guinness World Records Unleashed. So I did 12 that night, and then about a year and a half later, in January of 2015, I was contacted by the talent agent for the Macau China Venetian Casino to come out and be a part of a VIP show where they were having Guinness World Record holders come out and try to break existing records. Wow. So I rolled 14 in 1 minute that night.
Wow. That's awesome.
That record still stands. So I'm
congrats.
Yeah, thanks. It was a great experience, and in my wildest dreams, I never thought I'd be going halfway around the world to bend some steel.
Right. That's wild.
Yeah.
All right. How about hardest thing to bend for you as far as the materials go?
Well, I got to tell you, and I've heard a lot of guys say this, my shoulders are just not that flexible at all. The red nail was really hard for me because of the 7-inch length. What I did was to try to improve. So let me give you a little. I'm going to get a little long-winded here on this explanation. When I started doing my bending, I was all reverse style, right? And I got and then Gavin Hall certified on the red nail doing the double overhand style, right?
Yeah.
So Pat was experimenting with it, and he goes, "You got to try this style. It's a lot more powerful." So I tried it, and I was able to take down a piece of 9/32 stainless steel. So I was like, I had been bending grade 8s reverse style, but I wasn't able to really do much with that piece of steel. I put it right down after my whole bending workout. I was like, oh, man, there's something to this.
Yeah.
So I then went and tried to certify on the red nail. I went up to Bob Bolenbach's gym. This was in February of 04. And I never had bent the red nail fully. I did that day, but it took me 10 minutes. All right.
Wow.
Yeah. So Pat was my witness. Bob Bolenbach was my witness. They called Randy, told him about it. Randy calls me up and said, "Steve, I can't accept your certification with the red nail." I was like, "Why not?" He goes, "Well, it took too long." I was like, "Well, it doesn't say anywhere in the rules that there's a time limit."
Right.
He says, "Well, I gave that some thought." He goes, "In the spirit of things, if you were performing in front of a crowd doing a strength feat and you were up there for 10 minutes struggling with something, would you lose your audience?" I said, "Oh yeah, absolutely lose my audience." He goes, "So from now on, I'm putting a 1-minute time limit on the feet." I was like, "Okay, I'll work with that." I said, "Are you going to be at the AOBs dinner in June?" He goes, "Yeah, I'll be there." I said, "Please bring a red nail. I'm going to certify." So, I did everything I could, and then that's when I changed over to double overhand full time. I rigged up a 7-inch block of wood with an eye bolt in it, and I would take weight and hang it from that block and just hold it up here off the ground, create
Nice.
that isometric, and then I would move my hands in like this. So I'd create that isometric strength. So I got to where, I was bending red nails, on the regular, pretty easy. And after my performance with Pat, I went and I certified on the red nail. I had like nothing to eat that day, and I was like gassed out, but I had enough left to certify, and I did it right in front of Randy Strassen. And it's pretty funny.
Cool.
Yeah, it was great. And the funny thing is, I had leather wraps, right? And I was using two 4 pieces of 4x6 leather on each end.
Yeah.
So it was like that thick around. It wasn't anything crazy, right?
Sure.
And so a couple of guys like put a picture up with me, and after Randy, started putting the Iron Mind wraps into play in the certification process, and someone put a picture up of me. "Oh, this is the reason why." And I was like, "No, these are not ultra thick wraps," because guys with wadding it up where they had like wraps like that, which where it's like solid leather, it's like extending the bar, I used these wraps were like floppy leather, gave me no leverage whatsoever. So it was like, I don't care, whatever you want to hate on me. Doesn't bother me. I did it properly in front of the guy who sells the stuff himself. So if he had a problem, he would have rejected my cert. So that was where the time limit for the red came in. It was because of my failed attempt at a 10-minute red band. I was successful.
No kidding.
Yeah. So that's the evolution behind that. I guarantee a lot of people do not know that little tidbit.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's a good story right there.
Yeah.
All right. How about something outside of this world in general, the strength world, bending, all of this stuff? Another hobby of yours, something else you enjoy that's not related to being strong.
Well, I've always loved baseball. Always loved baseball.
Nice.
I'm gonna say I don't like it as much now. I don't like the game as much now as I did as a kid. I think I don't want the game is just a little bit different. There are guys who play very hard. I mean, I know when I would play, I'd play till my wheels fell off. But you got guys like Pete Rose, who I grew up watching. The guy would just leave it all out on the field. Pitchers would pitch complete games. They do 20, 25 complete games a year. Now I don't even know if I have that many in a season from an entire pitching staff, in the major leagues.
Right.
It's a different game. I still enjoy watching it, but I don't know. It used to be a little more romanticized for me. Maybe that's part of being an adult versus being a kid, but I still enjoy the game.
I bet.
Yeah.
Nice. How about the one bend that got away? Something that you tried that you never could put down.
I don't have anything in particular. I got to a point where I was bending cut down reds at 6 inches. I tried some drill rod that was harder than reds. I gotta tell you kind of stumped me on this one because it's not that, I guess I never set my sets much higher than doing that red nail because I never thought I'd come anywhere close to doing it because I started out doing like nothing,
Yeah.
to get to that point, I was like elated. Yeah, I mean, I've tried some big horseshoes that I wasn't successful with, but I couldn't really name the brand.
We could expand it into lift or feet too. I know I had one guy on that never could put down a 500-pound squat or something like that, or anything like that. Anything that's still maybe you're still chasing.
I'll be 58 soon. It's hard to be its personal best, but there is one thing I am chasing that I have in the back of my mind. And on YouTube, I had not on YouTube, on Facebook and Instagram, I've been doing stone squats. So with my 345-pound stone, I would like to get a set of 20 with that. I don't know if I'm physically capable, but I did a set of 11 with it a couple of weeks ago. It'll be a slow, arduous journey. But if I can get to where I can do 20 squats with that thing, I'd be pretty happy. I would be real happy. I would love to one day get over to Scotland and Iceland and lift some stones there. But I hope I get the chance one day. I hope I'm not too old, or, or the travel restrictions are still around.
Sure.
But, and if things open up, I would love to try to do the Dinny stones. I don't know if I can get into proper position because of my back. To do that straddle lift, but that would certainly be icing on the cake. But I got to tell you, not that I'm sitting back and resting on what I've done because I'm always looking to improve. I'm pretty satisfied. I'm pretty happy with what I've accomplished because, when I look, I was just a skinny kid who started out like, just weak as a fly basically, and to have gotten up to where I've gotten. I'm happy, even though it wouldn't have won me any medals or placings in a good powerlifting competition or anything like that. I'm pretty darn happy. I really am.
That's great, man. All right, here's one that throws people, but I'm very interested for your answer. Who's the strongest person you know? And this is totally subjective to you. So if you want to say like your grandpa or something like that, that's fine. But you obviously know a ton of strong people, so you can just pick one if you need to. Yeah, well, it's interesting. Yeah, I do know a lot of strong people from a pure physical perspective. I'll say, Pat Povolitis, for what he's accomplished, especially his body weight and his physical limitations that he was given with severe scoliosis and a rod in the spine and all that stuff. But from an overall perspective, from a heroic perspective, it's going to be between my father and my maternal grandfather. My maternal grandfather, he played baseball with us until he was 85 years old. He was unbelievable. He was unbelievable. He actually went to high school with Lou Gehrig. Very good. They both went to Commerce High. That's awesome. And it's an that's probably what got me into baseball so much. But he was before his time. He delivered produce for a living. He was tough, man. He did this till he was 71. He was probably about 5'6", maybe 5'5.5", weighed like $145. But this guy was throwing around 150-pound bags of potatoes and onions all day long. So when I tell you, when he was still in his mid-70s, if he took his shirt off, bam, 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 six-pack, chiseled. I mean, I would always go, Grandpa, make a muscle. He'd make the muscle, and then he'd take his arm down. He'd go, where'd it go? Where'd it go? I go, come on, do it again. And he was very, very humble, but he was just really, man. And
anytime I do a strength feat, I always think of my grandpa. I hope that he's looking down at me proud.
That's good, man. That's the perfect answer. Like, I like hearing stuff like that. You know, on Chris Rice's episode, I think he talked about some guy he was working with, just like it's cool to hear the names that we know, of course, but I like hearing like, you know, someone's grandpa or something like that. It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. And funniest reaction a person has had when they find out you spend your time bending things.
It's usually, you do what? Or why? You know, but it's usually, it's, you know, when I'm on one, usually I don't say much about what I do. Usually somehow people find out about
Right.
what I do. I'll tell, like, you know, say I go to a new job. I've been in the same place right now for like 12 years. And they're like, you know, somebody asks, you know, what do you do for workouts and stuff like this? I told, like, you know, I'll bend horseshoes and frying pans and nails and stuff. And they're like, what do you mean? What do you mean you bend that stuff? I was like, yeah, I bend it. It's, you know, I use it to exercise, really. And they're like, and then they, all of a sudden it spreads like wildfire. Everybody looks up videos and they're like, you know, they're like, you do what? What do you do? You roll a frying pan? What do you roll it? People just usually laugh at you, you know,
right.
the ones that, because, and then they don't understand, you know. So that it's usually the laughter and the disbelief, and it's always the why. Nobody's ever outright laughed at my face, but they'll just go, what?
Yeah.
I don't understand that. And you know, we were talking about bending before, and there's what I'm sorry, this just struck my mind. I gotta tell you, I didn't look at bending as just as a feat itself. I look at bending as an exercise. So when I would do my bends, even double overhand, my hands were so close together.
Yeah.
Where I got tremendous wrist strength built up from this, where I was you know, levering 16-pound sledges without even practicing levering, because I got so much out of the bending. And, you know, some guys will, you know, when they started putting rubber bands around everything, and it took the grip aspect out of it. They used the rags that were almost like pipes, and they press down on the ends. Like, you're just doing the feet is just a means to an end. If I have one tip to give to people who are doing these bending feats, take the rubber bands off. Really squeeze that metal and get something out of that grip. Get that. You see this right there? You'll develop this sort of stuff in there. Yeah. Right. You'll develop this little lump right here. You'll develop all sorts of weird things in your hand from squeezing that little piece of metal so hard.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Well, that's actually, as we wrap up here, I want to get your advice for beginner benders or beginner lifters. Just what do you have to say to the new guys out there that are listening? Well,
what I would say is, you have plenty of information out there. There's going to be probably more bad than good. You know, so be careful what you follow. You use your own mind. Start slow, and, you know, get your technique down. Once your technique is down, the strength will follow. Make room in your workouts for your bending. Don't overdo other stuff and try to add bending into it, or else you may overtrain and hurt your areas, like right here, the front deltoids, the bicep tendon tie into the deltoids, all sorts of that stuff. Yeah. But what I got to say is, the number one thing is, believe in yourself. You know, a lot of guys talk about things that they've never seen before, and, you know, being done, and then it gives them the belief that they could do it. You got to get up to lofty heights these days to achieve something that hasn't been done now in the bending world. You know, back in the day, a red nail was, you know, hardly ever done. I was the 8th guy on the list to do it. You know, I'm not sure how many red benders there are now, but, you know, you know, so not many did it, and you know, now it's commonplace pretty much. You know, that people do it. But it was like the same thing with the 500-pound clean and jerk. Nobody did it. And one day in Columbus, Ohio, Vasily Alexia, boom, put it up over his head. All of a sudden, that record went to 510, 520, 560. You know, a handful of years later. So it's all about using your mind, and learn that your limits, maybe way above what you perceive. So take off any self-perceived limits.
Yeah.
A lot of times, that whole saying, believe it, you could achieve it. It's true, but for a beginner, just start slow, get your tendons and ligaments accustomed to the strain that you're going to put on them, work on your technique, watch your volume and frequency, take notes, write down exactly what you did. Don't use rubber bands on your wraps, and believe in yourself. That's really it. It's a little laundry list of things.
Nice, man. All right, Steve. Well, that's it, man. You're on Instagram and Facebook. If anybody wants to reach out to you, say hi or say they like the show or anything like that. It's been a pleasure, man. I knew I was going to enjoy talking to you, and this was great. I'd like to have you back on in the future because I think we still got more stories to go over, I'd imagine.
I was tickled that you asked me, and I thank Darren for nominating me, and I just want to thank you so much for having me on, and it makes me still feel a little bit relevant out there.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll see how things go back to normal here. We're not too far from each other in New York, so maybe we'll meet up one day for a little stone lifting or something.
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard, but I do a pretty mean Macho Man Randy Savage impersonation.
Oh, let's hear it. I know there's some wrestling fans on here.
Yeah, so this is what I'm going to put out. That's right, Cody. I'm going to come up to your place and I'm going to lift the stones. I'm going to show you who the cream of the crop is. And you're going to be my tag team partner. Don't go going behind my back, though, because Macho Man's coming after you if you do. And I'll drop the big elbow on you. I'll give you the 1, the 2, and the 3. Oh, yeah.
That's it with that. All right, Steve. I'll be in touch, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Cody. Have a good night.
Have a great, you too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.